folks, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Writer Rewind, coming to you with episode 4 of the series. Let's get right into it. So this week on Kamen Rider Geo, we're getting things further along in the story. We're in Exade's story right now, and we're actually going to do a throwback to a very specific episode, and we'll go ahead and mention that when we get there. We're learning a lot more this week about Geo, but we're actually learning a lot about the Time Jackers, and I'm starting to wonder where exactly they're getting their tech from, since we're wondering who's the real bad guy here, the Time Jackers or Geo. Now, since we're having more to do with Exade this week, I was hoping that we would have an extended fight here at the beginning of the show with Exade versus Geiz and Geo, but unfortunately we don't get that, because the fight is literally paused. Now, not the kind of pause that we would expect from a game or from Exade's series in and of itself, but it's actually the Time Jackers. We see that Hora has stopped time to go ahead and reset the ride watch. Now, like we said last week, it wasn't going to matter if they defeated another Exade here. You can't do that without using Exade's power, so it really didn't amount to much, and another Exade gets away scot-free. Now, the bulk of this episode is going to focus on the fact that Emu doesn't seem to have his memories anymore. Once another Exade is revived, Emu doesn't seem to remember anything about being Kamen Rider Exade, but the way he's operating still seems like he kind of has that same mentality of wanting to help patients and push past his limits to give patients the utmost care. Now, that's something that was a really big tenet of Emu's character back during that series in Exade. Because he was a pediatrician, he would primarily deal with just kids, but as the series progressed, he learned more and more about the people around him, and he wasn't just dealing with kids. The Bugster virus was affecting a lot of different people, so he came in contact with a lot of different people, and to that end, nobody that he came in contact with did he withhold care from. He tried to do his best as a doctor and a writer. Now, it's nice to see that they carry that over from the series here into Geo, but we do need that character development from Sougo specifically, and we're starting to see that. As we see Sougo go through the motions here in this episode, trying to figure out just what exactly it is that he needs to do to figure things out and keep things going, we're starting to get those things about his character. We see the benevolence that would be befitting of a king, since he seems to be doing the homework, trying to figure out what is motivating people and how exactly to make people better off. A lot of this comes across during a conversation that he has with Tsukuyomi about making him realize what happened with the conversation he had last episode with Geiz about how would you like it if somebody you felt close to was harmed or hurt, which is the same thing that is actually going on here. Now, once Sougo comes to this realization, he actually processes it and internalizes it very quick, which is good for him. But we see that he very quickly understands, you know what, I'm the reason that he feels like that, or maybe not specifically me, Geo's the reason he feels like that, so I need to resolve to do something to fix that. Now, we step back for a second to go ahead and focus on Geiz, who is actually trying to be very proactive about this. He doesn't want Sougo interacting with anything else in the past, or really anything at all, because that would lead further to him becoming Geo, or so he thinks. So he decides to go ahead and take his time machine into the past, specifically to Kamen Rider Exade Episode 2. Now, we know this because both Exade and Brave are fighting the bugster known as Alhambra, which was the wizard type, magic type of bugster there in that episode, and they're right in the middle of the episode when he drops in. And I do appreciate that Toei took the time and care to make sure that everybody was in the exact same costume. If you go and check, Emu's in the same costume he was wearing in Episode 2. Now, during his time in the past, we see that Geiz does try to take on another Exade by himself, and does a cool little bike attack there, kind of a tornado attack with the bike, but it's not enough to take him down. And of course, the whole point of this episode is to teach the writers something we would have learned as the audience last week during the Point 5 episode, which is that you need the power of the same writer that the another writer has taken. So we need that Exade power, and we need to kind of get to that point before somebody else gets hurt. Now, when we see that Emu has figured out who the identity of another Exade is, he tracks him down back into the game to try and talk some sense into him, and Sougo joins up as well, to little effect. But I do want to point out that at that time, we do see that location there is a very familiar location, and I love pointing this location out because I've actually gotten to visit there before. It's a place called Mount Iwafune, which is about an hour and a half outside of Tokyo. It's a place where you've seen a lot of legendary battles happen. You see it used several times in different Sentai series and Kamen Rider series. That place is very much an important location when it comes to filming. There's certain locations that you will always see repeated. That's definitely one of them. What I do appreciate as far as the callbacks to Exade go is another specific thing where in certain episodes of Exade they would actually use real medical terminology or an actual disease to give to the patient. That way they actually could tie it back to its medical roots. Here in Geo, we see that the child who actually has his father become another Exade to cure him does have a real disease, which is called idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy. Now, what that actually means is that the kid has an enlarged heart and it's not able to pump blood effectively. Now, in looking into this disease, we find that the prognosis isn't very good. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of shortness of breath, and it does most likely seem to be genetic, which would be why he as a child has it. Now, while talking about this disease, Hiro says that there's a possibility that he could have been able to save this child had he been able to operate on him a year prior. Now, there is a specific procedure that Hiro could have performed called the Kagami-Batista procedure, which is basically repairing the ventricle within his heart to get it to pump blood a lot more effectively. And now, it's very interesting to see that in Japan, this actually is a procedure that was pioneered more over there to have a better success rate. So it makes sense that they would use that specific procedure here on the kid, but the problem is he's already been diagnosed too late. But of course we're dealing with time travel, so we can fix that. Now for what it's worth, for the first time we're seeing that one of the Another Riders is actually motivated by something better than just beating stuff up or taking people's power away. We see that he was specifically picking certain kids out because they matched stature of his son. He was basically looking for organ donors. Now, I think it's interesting when we do see that the villains do have motivation that is realistic. The more understandable the villains, the more that it means something when you do defeat them, because there's something on the line. Now, once we do actually have to get into the fighting for the episode, we see that Sougo tries to go back into the past, but we see wolves show up in their own time machine. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, yeah, a robot versus robot fight, we can see that here. But the very interesting thing is that Wool is using the Captain Ghost, one of the vehicles that was utilized there in Kamen Rider Ghost, and attaches that to their time machine. Now, why they're able to do that, I have no clue. We didn't even know that they had those. Now, for one thing, it does explain, yes, the Time Jackers are using time machines to go back into the past. They're using technology. But at the same time, how do they have access to Rider powers? Now, once Emu does join into the fight there, once Sougo gets into the past, I do appreciate that they're using the same Ex-Aid costume that they used from the series. One notable way of noting that that is the exact same Ex-Aid costume is looking at the fins or the hair there on the helmet. Over the course of the series, the helmet that they used there for Ex-Aid got more exposed to sun and became a little bit bleached on the first three kind of prongs or whatever you want to call it there on the helmet, and it was really noticeable after a while. But that's the same one that they're using here and not the more specific camera accurate helmet that they would use. In most filming cases, they have two kinds of helmets, a helmet that they use for close-ups and then a helmet that they use for action. So here they're using the action helmet. Now, once Emu is depowered, it is up to Sougo to go ahead and utilize the newly gained Ex-Aid Ride Watch to go ahead and become Kamen Rider Geo with Ex-Aid Ride Armor. Now, in this form, he of course has Ex-Aid's look to him, but also his powers, and I do appreciate that there's starting to be this new trend here that whenever he uses the final attack of a previous rider, he kind of messes it up, and I do appreciate that. It's a way of showing the past, hey, this is what it was, but we're kind of putting a different spin on it. I know some people might find it sacrilegious, but I think it's actually kind of funny, and it's definitely entertaining. Now, once the fight is ended, we see that we're dealing with another bootstrap paradox, in that it's Sougo who gave the ride watch to Emu when he doesn't have his memories anymore, just for him to give it back to Sougo later on in the future. Now, I wonder how many times we're going to have to do this before we might have to answer the question, how did they get those ride watches in the first place? Now, thankfully, since everything got wrapped up in the past in 2016, they're able to go ahead and get the kid treatment, and Sougo sees that he's living a nice, happy life with his dad in the present day. Now, for what it's worth, I appreciate that Sougo is growing as a character, or at least is coming to accept the circumstances that he's in, when he tells Tsukuyomi and Gates that he understands what's going on, and that if in fact he does become Omageo, he wants to take them out. That shows that he accepts things, that shows that he's going along with everything that's happening, but he still does want to change his fate. But it looks like he's not actually going to be the one to change fate for some time, because the Time Jackers are out and about. And we're going to see a lot of that next episode when we're going to go back to Amanagawa High, which is the setting of Kamen Rider Forze, but we have two riders from Kamen Rider Faiz showing up. So yeah, this episode, it was a lot more simple as far as getting the story across. There's really not a lot to it. Really, it's about selling the toys right now. And I know it's become very toyatic here in Kamen Rider over the last several years, but we do kind of have to get things along. I imagine based off other series, we'll probably have to hit episode 12 before the real story kicks in, which will probably be sometime around Christmas. Now, up until that point, we do need to get little bits and pieces to keep us going along with that until we get there. And we're starting to get that finally, as far as characterization is concerned, for Sougo. Again, I'm glad to see the returning cast of Ex-Aid and certain things coming back, the references to the medical jargon, to Hiro eating his sweets there at the end of the episode, making sure everyone's in the proper costumes, and using shots from that series. It's kind of a Back to the Future 2 way of doing things, you know, kind of inserting new footage into footage you've already shot. Now, I'm starting to think I understand where the Timejackers are coming from. I'm not quite sure yet, but I think I'm formulating an idea of who they are. But those are just my thoughts on this. I want to hear what you guys thought in the comments below, so let's go ahead and talk about a few things. First off, the Timejackers. How do you think they got the power of the Captain Ghost and are able to use that with the time modules? Secondly, the Ride Watches. If Sougo is doing these bootstrap paradoxes, technically somebody would have had to have started them by giving the older riders the watches to begin with. So how do you think they got them? Was it another rider or another character we haven't met yet? And thirdly, specifically regarding the Fi's Phone 10 watch, do you think that it's possible that Fi's himself will play a bigger part in the story to where everybody got a piece of his technology in the future? You tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you can always talk to me over on social media. On Twitter, I'm at JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 4 of Rider Rewind for episode 4 of Kamen Rider Geo, No Continue 2016. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again next episode.